In England, just before the war, one of the most important political issues was the right of women to vote. It was the suffragettes who led the fight. First, they tried peaceful protest. But when this didn't work, they turned to violence, burning down and bombing buildings. The British government started a campaign to silence the suffragettes. They were sent to jail and forced to endure all the humiliation of prison life. The suffragettes called off their campaign as soon as war broke out. Most women felt it was their duty to help the war effort.
Oh, we don't want to lose you, but we think you ought to go.
At first, they encouraged men to enlist and provided things for the troops. They collected millions of cigarettes, books, and pairs of socks. By 1915, there was a shortage of workers, as so many men had joined up. In this total war, women were needed to take over jobs which had always been done by men.
The man of blood. Though his skin is white, his heart is black. Every employee of the state, in government or in the services, of German birth or parentage, should be forced to resign. The innocent must suffer with the guilty.
In every country at war, hatred like this seemed natural, even reasonable. The enemy was portrayed as an ogre of horrifying monstrosity, or as a discomfited clown. Dark neuroses lurked beneath the surface of civilian patriotism. Yet the patriotism was real enough. It inflamed the hearts of women as well as men. Some of its manifestations were unpleasantly hysterical. There were women who felt it their duty to force men into the services by every device of scorn and blackmail.
I went to the music hall in civilian clothes on one leave, and I was lined up outside. A lady come along, and up 35, and put a white feather into my hand. I looked at it, felt very disgusted, and there wasn't much I could do about it.
Thousands of other women found their patriotic outlet in Lloyd George's munitions program.
These girls were drawn from domestic service, mills, and shops mostly. A lot of very young girls there, and young married women who had come principally to help keep their homes together when their husbands were away, and also many of them felt that they were helping the war effort very much.
In Britain, more and more women took over from men as this industrial revolution gathered speed. By the end of 1915, there were 73 national munitions factories, as well as the armaments firms and all the privately owned industries converted to war work. American machines and British improvisation were the tools with which Lloyd George achieved success. The skilled craftsman gave way to the machine minder. Victorian methods gave way to mass production.
In the closing months of 1915, the national factories' combined output was 200,000 shells, nearly all of the lighter natures. In the following year, 1916, their total output was nearly 7 million, more than half of which was medium and heavy shell.
Not only in munitions did women take over more and more jobs that had always been traditionally a man's. They repaired gas holders. They shoveled coal into the retorts that made the gas. Heavy work, hot and dirty.
She's a lassie from Lancashire, just a lassie from Lancashire. She's a lassie I
first women conductors appeared on buses and trams. Middle-class girls, too, left their sheltered life in the home and went to work as clerks in offices or became nurses. For women, the war marked a social revolution.
A while you kiss me sad adieu. When the clouds roll by, I'll come to you. Then the skies will seem more blue down in Lover's Lane, my dearie. Wedding bells will...
It was terribly hard, terribly monotonous, but we had a purpose and we meant to do that work, and we did. There wasn't a drone in the factory, and every girl worked and worked and worked. I didn't hear one grumble, and I hardly ever heard or knew of one that stayed out, because she had her man in mind, and we all had. I myself was working with sailors' wives from the 3 ships that sank, Abuka, Cressy, Hogue, and it was pitiful to see them. If anyone had a letter from France, we just read it, and we got to know all the girls' sweethearts or husbands. We got to know all their Christian names. And when we used to go into the factory in the morning, how's Tommy? How's Dick? How's so-and-so? Have you heard from him? And of course, some would shed a tear and say they hadn't, which meant what had happened to them.
The most dangerous work of all was filling the shelves with explosive, or making the explosive itself.
The clothing we wore was fireproof, the shoes was fireproof, and every time we went out to a meal, we had to take all our fireproof clothing off and put on our outdoor clothing, which took time from our dinner hour. And again, we were searched when we returned in case of cigarettes, matches, or pins, etc. Once or twice we heard, oh, so-and-so's gone. Perhaps she'd made a mistake and her eye was out. But there wasn't any big explosion all the time I was there. We sang. We made the little pellets, very innocent-looking little pellets, but had there been the slightest grit in those pellets, goodbye. We got home and we had a lovely good wash. And believe me, the water was blood red and our skin from then on was perfectly yellow. Right down through the body, legs and toes and toenails even, perfectly yellow.
These women were called canaries. Their devotion was essential to the success of Lloyd George's armaments program. Nevertheless, the British were rousing themselves, flexing their dormant muscles. Civilians and soldiers, industrial as well as military might, the Allies were moving into total war. The fight against food shortages fell upon a nation short of fertilizers, animal feeding stuffs, and above all, labor. In 1917, the Women's Farm Labor Force, over 230,000 of them by 1918, put on their uniforms, and the fight for higher food production was carried into the fields by a new army, the Women's Land Army. The Lilac Sunbonnet Brigade, as they were called, overcame the skepticism with which they were greeted by the farmers and formed a vital replacement to farm workers, drafted by the inexorable demands of war to the front. Timber, a vital commodity in a war which demanded more and more for pit props, for ammunition boxes, for huts and billets, for duckboards, for trench works, and for building, called for more and more labor. Again, women came to help and invaded a man's world with energy and with unexpected skill. Nations came to accept the breaking down of traditions and firm beliefs, intrusions upon old ways, personal liberties. The war was insatiable. The men had marched away in millions and they had died in millions. Now women had to don service uniform.
Today we had a unique war pageant of a most inspiring kind. A procession of 3,000 young women, representative of all the branches of war work in which female labor and ability is employed, each section distinguished by its own separate uniform.
The Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, the WACs, serve as cooks, typists, telephonists, transport drivers, motorcyclists. Some work in the census office, decoding messages in every modern language.
The Women's Royal Naval Service, the Wrens, are employed on cleaning torpedoes, signalling, making mine nets, gas masks, depth charges and sails.
The Women's Royal Air Force, known as the RAFs, are drivers and fitters on aircraft and airships.
Women gained an importance as part of the machinery of victory that they had never enjoyed in their own right. Total war, rather than Mrs. Pankhurst and her suffragettes, gave women the right to vote.